Hi, and welcome to the second episode of Mindset Mondays. And today we're going to be talking about a very common experience where people kind of compound difficult situations that they find themselves in by not accessing help to get out of those situations. For a lot of people, the reason why they don't just go and get help, go and get support with this. You can always ask someone for help. The reason that doesn't happen is because for a lot of people, particularly people who are at the end of all of their resources, they don't have money coming in, they don't know when money will be coming in again, or they do have money, but it's not a lot of money. Most of it goes to bills and existing commitments. The feeling is, well, I can't actually ask for help. People can't ask for help. You can pay for help, but you can't ask for help. And if you don't have the means to pay for help, tough luck, you have to sort that out yourself. I know, I've been there. I don't even bother to ask for the help I need at the moment, which is work on my roof that the insurance won't pay for, and a new fence before the winter and likely storms and things come in, because I've seen the comments on Facebook from trades about people who ask for payment plans. The comment of, oh, it's called a credit card, it's called a bank loan, if the bank won't lend you money, why would I? Because life happens to people sometimes, and not everybody just has instant access to however much credit they need. What does my head in with trades is fencing certainly is a very, very straightforward job to say it's going to cost this much. But oh god, scratchy chin. I couldn't possibly say how much it's actually going to cost. I eventually get someone out to do a quote, and then it ends up being half as much again as they said it was going to be. Like, like roofing, I understand. Roofing, I get. Okay, you're not going to know what you're going to need to do oftentimes until you actually get up on the roof and you see what the situation is. But fencing, that's literally how much space needs to be enclosed by a fence. How high do you want the fence? What kind of material would you like your fence to be? And what kind of ground do you have? And then right, I need to have materials that will cost this much. I'm going to need to have 2 labourers as well as myself. The labourers' wages per day are this. My wages per day are that. I'm going to be travelling however many miles, and that's going to cost me whatever in fuel. And, I need to make my profit on top of that. I don't have a problem for that. Of course you need to make your profit on top of that. But that's a fairly fixed cost that you could say it's going to cost this much. And in my situation, I'll get back to you and go, you know what, if you can't do a payment plan, I appreciate that, but I won't be able to book you until I've saved up that much money. Thank you for letting me know how much I need to save up. But no, you'll get dragged to shit on Facebook for, asking for help. And so a lot of people don't, because we're getting to the situation, and it's been especially the case since the pandemic, that you can't ask for help, you can only pay for help. So how do you navigate that when you can't pay for help? Well, some things you just have to accept. It's not going to happen. I'm trying to figure out ways to sort out the fencing before the winter. I'm finding out things that I'm looking now into things that I can buy on eBay that I can just chuck across the hole that's in my roof. High insurance companies, by the way, the most likely thing that's going to cause damage to a fucking roof is vermin. So why don't you cover that? You know, in my case, I had a neighbour who thought it was fun to feed seagulls, but, you know, to throw the bread onto my roof and not hers, because, you know, isn't that hilarious? Go and trash someone else's roof. But, you know, so those are the two things. I'm just sorting those out myself at the moment as best I can. It's not great, but it's good enough. But on a wider level of, you know, what do you do when you feel that you're just going to be expected to pay for help and you can't afford to do that, but you need help? One of the things I found is really useful is to imagine that you're talking to your favourite fictional character. And the fact that it's a fictional character is really important, because if you imagine an actual person, you start to bring in the anxiety about, oh gosh, but what would they think of me that I've got myself into this situation? Oh gosh, but, you know, I know them and I like them and I want to pay them for their help. When it's a fictional character, they don't actually exist. So they don't think anything of you at all. And they don't need anything from you because they're not real. They don't exist. So I have a particular character I will flag up. I'm not culturally across things. I don't really have current interests. So most people will probably not have a clue what I'm talking about if I actually say who my fictional character is. So it's not relevant. In case anybody does know and is like, oh yeah, found my tribe. My fictional character is Tony Stamp from ITV's The Bill, which ran from 1984 to I think around 2010. So that's how out of date my cultural references generally are. I'm an older millennial. I'm very, very tired. I stopped caring about most things a long time ago. But yeah, that's my character, and your character will be whoever you choose. It might be someone from a film, it might be someone from a television series you're watching currently, it might be someone from a book series. But the important thing is they are fictional. They don't actually exist, but you have enough of a connection with them. You've seen enough of them. You've spent enough time with them, whether through reading the book or watching the television series or whatever, that you can anticipate how they might respond to particular situations. And you either use journaling to imagine that they're responding to your written prompts. I like journaling because I find talking quite anxiety inducing. Doing these whole videos is actually something that I set myself as a personal development challenge so that I could hopefully become more comfortable and confident with maybe going for customer facing or client facing jobs where I was expected to actually talk to people. There's like, maybe I could even develop my sales skills. I'm absolutely abysmal at sales, for the record. That's official. I once worked as an accounts assistant, and the deal with that was everybody in the accounts department had to spend a month with the sales team, which made a lot of sense. I got sent back after 2 days because I was that bad at sales. So I am terrible at sales, but doing these videos, I thought, you know, I need to get better and more comfortable at talking and at verbal communication, because people are moving massively away from written communication right now. the whole voice notes thing. Ever since the pandemic, it's been a lot more difficult for me to actually get people to respect. I have a hearing impairment. Could you please not call me? Could you please do it by email? Never used to have a problem with that. People used to be completely okay with that. And then the pandemic hit, and after we've gone back from that, it seems that people are like, no, 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 this is how I want to live my life. This is what's easiest for me, and I don't care about you. And that makes a lot of things a lot more difficult than they need to be. But anyway, so you can have your fictional character responding to written journal prompts. So you write down a question or a situation or some feelings that you're having, and then you put yourself in that character's shoes and you write a response as though you're them. That might be good if, like me, you're a lot better with written communication. If you're more comfortable with verbal communication, you can absolutely have a conversation with them. You can imagine that they're in the room with you and they're talking to you. They're literally responding in natural communication. You say a thing, they respond to that. If you have a burner phone, then maybe you could even do a voice note exchange, kind of make it even more immersive. So, you leave a voice note on the burner phone, you as fictional character respond to your voice note from the burner phone with a voice note of your own to your own phone as your actual self. Whatever works for you. And often one of the things I've found is that putting myself in that character, in my case, Tony Stamp from ITV's The Bill, putting myself in the position of, okay, I know how this guy thinks to a degree. I know what his priorities are. I know what his attitudes around certain people and situations are. I can apply that as though I were him to my own situation. It takes you out of your own head. It breaks through a lot of your own limitations, and that's why for some people who often find themselves immediately bringing in a limitation, immediately going, oh, but no, that wouldn't work, because it may well be best to find a character who's completely different to you, but that you still connect with, because you then have to enter a mindset that isn't yours. And so, that's one way, that kind of exchange with a fictional character. Whether you do that through voice notes, through a natural conversation, or through written journal prompts, it's fine. Taking it further, if you're dealing with a really pressing, emerging, actual emergency situation, is just go into somewhere like the Citizens Advice Bureau, because it's free to go in there. Just go in and explain your situation, explain your barriers, and just see how they respond. They might respond terribly. They might respond that they're not able to do anything. I am a little bit unique in that I tend to not recommend calling the Samaritans. The Samaritans are not trained counsellors. They're ordinary people, and they can deal with ordinary life stresses. They can't really, in most cases, deal with big challenges. A lot of the time, because they're often middle class retired people, they can't really deal with the impact of poverty, because they don't really understand poverty. They don't, in many cases, actually believe that it exists. They believe that it's a moral failing, and you can just go, and every supermarket or every fast food job, it's literally you just walk in the door and they give you a job. The challenges that people have explaining that's not even how those jobs work. It probably should be how those jobs work, absolutely, because they are hard work, but they're not challenging work. They don't actually require that you have GCSEs and experience, and it will be a whole other video for me to rant about how the UK approaches right to work as well. I have a lot of problems with right to work, for many reasons, but primarily, why are we inventing, literally as a nation state, as a government, why are you inventing a barrier to people just going and getting a job and getting paid and being able to pay their own bills and being able to pay tax revenues to you as the state? Why are you doing that? Other than you want a power trip, why are you doing that? But as I say, we could be here all day if I went into that. So, I would not really bother with the Samaritans, particularly if you're having a unique to poverty challenge. But I would absolutely go into the citizen's advice. If you don't have medical trauma, or you are able to manage your medical trauma to a degree, I would go and see your GP. If you're in England, you won't have to pay to see your GP usually if you're with an NHS GP. And they can either refer you to another support service that you don't have to pay for, or they will signpost you to a self-refer service that you don't have to pay for. Again, a lot of people who are in complex challenge haven't found the NHS wellbeing service to be particularly helpful. So completely respect that. But that's something you can discuss with your GP, and your GP will also recognise when your situation is more than the wellbeing service could actually handle. So, for example, the most recent time I went to my GP about my own mental health issues, they actually recommended hypnotherapy, which unfortunately the NHS doesn't provide in my area, and I can't afford. And when I pointed out I couldn't afford hypnotherapy, I was prescribed benzodiazepine. That wasn't as helpful as it could have been, but I know that as and when I have some money, as and when things work out, I can pay for hypnotherapy. Because I am quite trance resistant, I'm going to have to be going on a lot of reviews. I'm going to have to be talking to the hypnotherapist before I actually pay them to find out how they would navigate that. But I'm open-minded to that. Also, there are options for, if something is recommended, just have a look on Google and see if it's something that you can learn at least the very basics of yourself. So previously with a GP, I was previously recommended EMDR therapy. Again, can't afford that. NHS doesn't cover it in my area. But I looked into it, did a bit of research on it, and I'm quite good at intuitively, quote unquote, getting things. It's easy for me to understand a concept. That's one of the few blessings I do have in my life, is I have that kind of intelligence where I can explore a concept and I can go, oh yeah, this makes sense. And so I use that myself. And I would say it works about 90% of the time. The other 10% is I'm not even aware that a panic attack is happening before I'm in it. And then I'm just blanking. I can't access any cognitive resources at all. And that's probably something I need to talk to someone about as well. So, you can look into things that are recommended that you can't afford through Google, look on YouTube. Make sure you're fact checking your sources for things as well, because especially with things like EMDR, it's really important that you're not just going with someone has presented what they believe the thing is, that you are actually aware of. You actually have several sources. I would say at least 3 sources that are all saying the same thing about, yes, this is what this is how you do this. Engaging in some kind of conversation, either written or verbal, with a fictional character that you connect with. Going to the citizen's advice or your GP, those are free services that you can go into. If it goes badly, you never have to see those people again. Your GP, people go, oh, but you would. It's really, really rare with the NHS to see the same GP twice. And they probably won't, maybe even if you do have the same GP again, they probably won't remember what you said last time. Just go to those places, put your situation out there. Do not ask social media. Social media seems easy because it has that distance, it feels more anonymous, the stakes feel low, but it is full of people who just want to be on a wind up. It's full of people who are already angry and stressed and resentful themselves. It's full of people who actually just don't know anything about the things they think they know about. So, recap. If you are feeling, oh, but I can't get help, because it's not about you can always ask for help. It's about you always have to pay for help and I can't. Have those conversations with the fictional character. Go to your GP or Citizen's Advice. Google things and make sure you're fact checking them. And with fact check, you're looking for 3 to 5 sources that are all saying the same thing. And all of those sources should actually be official sources. I'm not talking here about, oh, well, I found 15 people on TikTok who all agreed. I'm saying, well, I found 5 government, medical, professional experience person websites, and I can verify credentials and they all say similar things. That's what I'm talking about with you need multiple sources. And yeah, sometimes it is the case that you can't ask for help, you have to pay for help. And that sucks. And people should be more supportive and more willing to engage with people who have a genuinely urgent need that they can't just afford to pay you to meet. You know, if I knew anything about putting fences up or doing roofing, and someone said to me, I can't pay you, but this is really urgent right now, like my house isn't really livable, or I don't feel safe in my own garden, or I don't feel safe going to sleep because anyone could just come onto my property. If I knew about those things, I'd go and help, whether that person could pay me or not. And I grew up in a community where that was how things were done. And it saddens me that we're mocking people for not being able to access credit. It really does. But, there are usually answers. There are usually people you can ask for help. Even if that's a fictional person, even if it's Google. Okay? And so just take a breath and think, what is a no-cost way that I can navigate this? Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in a future video.